Welcome to today's live case with Kearney. Y'all, really glad to have you with us, and a big happy Friday to everyone joining. We've got a fun crowd here today. Really looking forward to this session. Pop in the chat where you're calling in from, where you're dialing in from. It's always fun to learn where people are joining from. So we've got folks here on Zoom. We've got folks on LinkedIn Live as well, and Facebook and YouTube. So uh, thank you for joining, taking some time out of your Friday to learn about case interviews, to learn about Kearney. Really thrilled to have you and excited for today's session. So we're going to take a couple of minutes here. We've still got folks dialing in, tuning in, getting settled in. I highly encourage you to have a pencil and a paper with you to practice. Follow along with today's case. It's a fun opportunity for some case practice with a really interesting case. I'm really excited for the case here with our special guests from our friends over at Kearney. All right. While everybody's continuing to get set up, maybe you're grabbing a beverage. I've got a couple of quick announcements for you on the call. So you don't need me to tell you that there's a lot of application deadlines for many consulting firms here and as well as around the corner. We just had a couple this week for MBB, and there's more coming later this month and in September. So many of you joined this call, we know are prepping for case interviews. So we're right with you. We're cheering you on. We've got too many resources to count to help you in your journey, both free and freemium. So first off, one amazing free resource to check out is our interview hub. And so scan the QR code here up on the screen, and I'm going to pop it into the chat as well. But this interview hub has just a bunch of our best free resources on all things interviews for consulting. So check it out. There's a link in the chat, and you can scan the QR code here. Next up, if you need some external help to help get you over the hump with your case prep, we've got a team of 25 expert coaches who would love to meet you, to work with you, to work on a personalized plan with you to help cover up your weaknesses and enhance your strengths inside the case interview. And that's our Black Belt program. And Black Belt is a really amazing structured program where we take you from where you're at to ready for the highest level of case interviews, right? And so our coaching calendar is filling up fast. It's just that time of year. Everybody's booking, everybody's prepping for case interviews. And so we don't have a ton of availability, but we'd love to accommodate you on whatever timeline you're on. So check out Black Belt for more information. Next up, we've got our strategy sprint consulting project, which is always a lot of fun. So for those of you who maybe didn't land an internship this summer and you're looking to cover that gap in experience with some fun consulting experience, then this project is for you. It's a 1 week virtual project. You can see the dates here up on the screen. But anyways, you get mentorship from a former McKinsey, Bain, or BCG consultant. You work for a real client. You work in a small team, in a virtual team, meet a lot of cool people from diverse backgrounds, and just have a lot of fun making impact for a client. Plus, it's US work experience that looks amazing on your resume. So enough said, there are 3 spots left for the project that starts next weekend, Saturday, August 17th. And we'd love to have you in Strategy Sprint. So check that out. In a minute, there will be links in the chat as well to learn more about Sprint. Last, but certainly not least, if you are interested in Black Belt or Sprint or any of our other programs, then you might want to talk with a member of our team just to make sure it's the right fit for you. And you can do that as well. Book a 15-minute call with our Eden, everyone's favorite salesperson. So again, QR code to check that out. Hope to see you in one of these programs. I see some familiar names and faces on the call, and let me take a quick second to run through the chat. We've got 100 comments in here. Brian, hello from University of Michigan, amazing. Barbara from Venezuela, amazing. We've got some couple different Venezuelans here on the call. Hello from Nigeria, Boma. Amazing. Thank you for calling in. Sammy from New Jersey. Rahul from Birmingham, UK. Amazing. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. Miriam, Austin, Texas. Laderick, Greenville, South Carolina. Arwa from India. Germany. Wow. Incredible. Green Bay, Wisconsin. Nashville, Phoenix, DC. Dallas, George from Washington, DC. Great to have you with us. All right. Well, Kearney is hiring for a couple of select roles. Check out this QR code and link in the chat to learn more about those opportunities. They'd love to meet you. Um, again, the firm is hiring for a couple different roles, and so you can learn more about that. See the firm's jobs board. Scan the QR code here. Okay. All right. Well, y'all are probably tired of hearing from me, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give you a quick overview of today's session, and then we'll introduce our guests and roll right into this. So if you have not attended one of these live case sessions before, welcome. Happy to have you with us. You're going to get to see what a real consulting case interview is like, right? And today we've got our friends at Kearney who are demonstrating what their case interview is like. So really fun opportunity. It's a privilege to have them with us and to get to kind of see what the work is like, what the interview style is like, etc. And so really excited for this session. We have Alfredo with us today. Alfredo, thank you so much for joining. Tell us where you're calling in from, a little bit about yourself, and a little bit about Kearney.
100%. Thank you so much, Japheth, and hope everybody can hear me. But the first thing is I want to thank everybody that is joining and is dedicating time on a Friday to learn about casing. I'm going to try to make it fun and engaging with Edward. A bit about me. I'm a manager living in Durham, North Carolina. I'm aligned with our New York office, and I've been with Kearney for about 3.5 years. I'm part of our digital and analytics practice, and I focus mostly on data and AI. In fact, last year I led our internal program for AI transformation and start shaping our go-to-market strategy to support clients in AI projects, and that's very interesting. I moved to the US about 9 years ago, did 3 years of business analytics in chemicals, then went to Sloan. While I started my career at Sloan, I was literally at the position that a lot of you are right now, trying to figure out consulting, crack the cases, and where can I pursue my career. So started with Kearney. I was also part of our ML team professional development program, and then that's how I joined. And yeah, been with the firm for this time, and excited to share a bit more about the firm. So I don't know if most of the people in the call know what Kearney is and who we are. We've been around for a while. The firm started in the early 30s, and we are right now. I mean, we work with the largest companies in the world. We're probably the world's most trusted advisor in strategic operations, and we're pretty global. We have about 6,000 employees, offices in 40 countries, including most of those that Japheth listed at the beginning of the call. Unfortunately, a Venezuelan office closed a while ago, but we still have some people from the original Venezuelan office working with us. And yeah, I can share a bit more about Kearney, but basically, yeah, we're a firm that is big enough to be working with the largest companies in the world, but small enough to where actually folks can have a quick impact. And that has been my experience working with the firm.
Amazing. Thanks for that introduction, Alfredo. Really quickly, in 30 seconds, what do you what in your mind is the firm's special sauce as far as why folks should consider Kearney versus maybe another firm?
100%. So it's quick. We're a value-driven organization, and that's something that is easy to say but hard to actually apply. When you join any type of firm, especially post MBA or a consulting firm, you try to look at the people that they've been there for a while, and you ask yourself, would I want to have the life that my bosses are currently having? And at Kearney, I can say that yes. You spend long hours working. Consulting is a hard job. There's a reason why companies pay so much money for people to do it. But in the end, it all comes down to, do I want to work with folks in this company, and are they working for something that you believe in? And I can certainly say that that's my experience.
I love it. All right. Well, I'll have to apply then. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for being here with us to lead the case. Last but certainly not least, Edward, thank you as well for joining, for volunteering your time to come on as a candidate here in this case. Can you just quick share a 30-second introduction of kind of you as well, where you're at and where you're looking to go?
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Japheth, and thank you, Alfredo, for the introductions, and thank you for having me. My name is Edward. I'm originally from Armenia, but I moved to the US when I was 14. I go to USC now, rising senior, but right now I'm interning at another consulting firm in New York. But post-grad plans probably would be staying in California, working at a consulting firm. TBD which one, but we will see. But thank you for having me.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I'm going to turn the floor over to Alfredo and Edward here to demonstrate what a Kearney case interview looks like. Alfredo, the floor is all yours.
Fantastic. So for those, obviously, Edward, you and I are going to solve the case, but for those that are solving at home, the process is pretty similar to any type of case, right? We lay out a prompt. Edward is going to provide us with a framework, and then we're going to explore through this framework some of the hypotheses and arrive to a recommendation, and then in the end, I'll provide some feedback. The only differentiating factor, Edward, is we're solving this case together. We're a collaborative firm, so I want you to put yourself in the mind of a Kearney consultant, right? We are tackling an issue that came from a CEO. I'm going to describe the prompt quickly, but if you have any questions or what would like to brainstorm, what is the best path forward? Let's do it together. Okay.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Awesome. So, and this actually this is one of my favorite places. Is I did this. Comes from actual experience from a couple of years ago. So our client is a carbonated soft drink manufacturer and distributor, and they're currently exploring the possibility of expanding their glass bottle brand portfolio in the U.S. market. The CEO asked Kearney to help determine whether that's a good idea or not. And while they haven't provided a specific margin or revenue targets, they want to make sure that if they expand, that it is actually a profitable pursuit.
Cool. So I'm just going to reiterate the case to make sure I have all the information that you provided. So does that sound like a good approach to you for now?
100%.
Cool.
Yeah.
So our company is a carbonated soft drink manufacturer and distributor, and they're looking to expand in the US about their glass bottle portfolio. They don't necessarily have a target in mind, but they just want to make sure that the company would be profitable if they expand and ensure that the venture would be a profitable investment.
A lot of times you'll get a prompt from a CEO that says, is this a good idea or not? How should I think about it, right? So that's
Cool.
the help that they're looking to get.
Sounds good. Yeah, I do have some clarifying questions in mind before we jump into the framework. First, do they have an idea of like where they want to expand first, or is it just like larger US market that we're looking at?
No, it's broader in the US.
And do we have like a time frame specific do we have like a specific time frame we're looking forward to make sure that this is a good investment?
Not at this point. They're just exploring options.
Sounds good. And do we handle the distribution ourselves and the manufacturing ourselves and the rest? Like, how is this the business model? Like, do we sell in stores, for example, or like what is our business model like in this case?
Oh, that's a great question. So basically, yes, they're a manufacturer and distributor, right? In the carbonated soft drink space, you can have the large scale buyers like say Walmart or a Target, right? And then they have a DSD, which is another model where they just go and distribute. For the purposes of this case, just assume that they're focusing on manufacturing and distribution, and they're exploring options. So no
Cool.
need
Is
to
it
go
okay?
to the channel.
Sounds good. Is it okay if I take a couple seconds to structure my thoughts?
I would be surprised if you didn't.
Cool. Sounds good. So I do have an sort of understanding of how I want to approach this case. The way I want to do it is kind of in four main buckets, and I'll list off all the buckets that I have, and then we'll go into each of them one by one specifically.
Okay.
First one, I want to look into the market attractiveness, see how big is the market, see like what are the competition like, and there were some recent trends which I will go into more in the later time. Second would be company capabilities, understanding like what we are doing best and like how we can make sure that this product is proprietary enough to be able to capture enough market share, as much market share as possible. Third one, I want to look into the financials. What's the upfront cost like? What's the revenue and cost drivers, and also like the payback period to make sure that this is a profitable investment. And four would be risks and considerations. Obviously, we don't want to have any cannibalization within this product in our portfolio. We want to understand how we can enter the market, what's the best way to do so, and things like that. So going into the deeper into the framework, in terms of the market attractiveness, I want to first understand the size, like how big is the market that we're trying to play at.
Let's take a step back. Let's take a step back.
Okay,
I like
cool.
your framework, but let's pressure test it a bit, right? So
Sounds good.
let's structure the framework around the questions that we're gonna tell the CEO, right? What is the question that we're answering with each of the components?
Sounds good. Yeah. So I'll go into them one by one. Do you want me to go one by one?
Yeah, each of the components of the framework don't need to go into the next level. Just what are the buckets and what are the answers that we will be getting?
Okay, sounds good. So market attractiveness we will first want to understand, is this a good idea or not, right? So this is like a pretty broad question. So the way I'm thinking about this is when we think about the investment being attractive, we want to make sure that we're entering a market where we can have a profitable investment, right? So in order to understand that, we want to understand how big is the market. We want to understand how fragmented is the competition. So like, is there enough room for us to play in terms of when we enter this market? I want to understand the growth rate. Is there like enough growth so we will be able to handle this investment and also have a continuous income and profitability.
Okay.
And one thing that I also want to share is recent trends, understand like what has been the recent trends within the market, like why did we choose to specifically expand our glass bottle portfolio, right? So understanding customer preferences, like would they be willing to buy this product that we're trying to expand? And lastly, I also want to look into the regulation in this category, just because I know that glass could be sort of like a haphazard product that if it breaks, there might be certain compliance issues. So like that would also be a sort of a mini consideration within this larger bucket of market. Does that make sense to you? Do you have any questions for the market part for now?
No, I think that's pretty reasonable. What comes next?
Cool. What comes next is the company capabilities. I want to understand what's our existing glass bottle portfolio looking like? Like what have we done in terms of the research and development? Where does it stand in terms of the ongoing like maintenance, or like how we make sure that this product is like proprietary enough to be able to capture as much market share as possible? I want to look into our sales and marketing team. So understanding if we have any presence, if we have any sort of experience in expanding our products to a different market, whether that's geographically or like to new customers. So understanding those would be a good sort of a starting point in terms of providing us with a general understanding of our own company and our expertise as well.
Okay, so no need to go into the third and fourth. I think they're pretty clear. Is there a reason why you first look at capabilities before profitability?
Before profitability, I want to so profitability is the way I think about this is first we develop this product and then we develop the costs. The reason I chose capabilities first is because I want to make sure that before making the investment, we have the expertise and necessary sort of company like brain power, right? To make sure that we can make this investment a profitable one.
You could also make a case, right? That if possibly we could make it profitably, right? Then we can figure out how to do it. So there's sort of options. Not necessarily just challenging to see how it works. Okay, let's talk about the market. So I know a bunch of people are gonna hate me right now, but let's try to figure out using some basic heuristics. What is the market size of the glass in terms of revenue? What is the glass bottle carbonated soft drink market in the US?
So glass bottle carbonated soft drinks. So we don't necessarily look into like the people that buy it in cans or like the fountain drinks, so just the glass bottles.
Yeah, Exactly. And for this, please walk me through the equation without going into the calculations, and then you can, you know,
Cool.
show the numbers.
Sounds good. Is it okay if I take a couple of seconds to structure my thoughts first?
Of course.
Also, there's a background noise there. I'm not sure if it's
Oh,
from
sorry.
your. Sorry about that. Cool.
It's a freaking train. Yeah. My apologies,
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah. No worries. No worries. Cool. So the way I wanna structure this market sizing problem is first I want to start off with the U.S. population, understand how big is the U.S. population. I would assume to use the 300 million number if unless you have any other thoughts, but I guess we won't dive into the calculations just now. The way I want to segment the population is understanding what are the percentage of people who get soft drinks on a weekly basis, right? So from my personal experience, I have friends who hate soft drinks. Couldn't be me, but there are people like that. I have friends who get soft drinks like once a week. I have friends who get soft drinks like I'd say twice a week. And also I have friends who get soft things like 3+ times a week. So those four main buckets is the one I'm like trying to look at. And then once we have those four buckets, we'll assume the percentages, make some assumptions unless you have any other data to show, but we can make some assumptions about the percentages that fall into each of those categories. So that will give us the sort of the sum of those numbers will give us the number of people who consume soft drinks weekly. So after that, I want to sort of understand what's the percentage of the people who consume soft drinks in a glass bottle, right? So understanding the percentage of people who buy just glass bottle soft drinks. And then from that point on, I will try to annualize that number just because we have used weekly numbers so far. And then
Yep.
multiply that number by 50 just to get that's the annualization part. And then also understand what's the average cost of soft drinks to get the revenue number as well. Does that approach make sense to you, or do you want to make any tweaks for that before we get started?
Wouldn't say cost but price, but yeah, it makes sense. But I'm gonna challenge that framework a bit, right? Because instead, I mean, you looking at the youth population, it's a good heuristic, but there's another way that you could look at it just based on how do you anticipate people will consume sodas, right? Is it an individual
Households?
who buys the soda? Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
Perfect. Let's
Cool.
use households because it's simpler, but I agree with your logic.
Cool. Sounds good. So is that the only tweak you wanted to make to the equation, or is there anything else?
For simplicity, let's use that one. Yeah.
Cool. So diving into the numbers here, I would assume that based on the US population, I would assume that there's about 100 million households. Is that a good number to use for you?
Okay.
Cool. So we're still left with the 100 million households in the US, and then we'll go to the second portion of the framework, which is understanding the weekly consumption of soft drinks. So we have the zero, so like the non-drinkers, we have the 1, we have the 2, and the 3+ times a week. So going into here, making some assumptions, I would assume that about 30% of the US population doesn't consume any soft drinks just because recently, especially, there's a big push towards more healthier alternatives of soft drinks. So I would assume that 30% of the US population would not be consuming anything. So does that number make sense to you, or should?
Yeah.
Cool. So 30 million households are already out of the window. When we think of the people who drink soft drinks once a week, I would assume they're more than people who don't drink anything. So not a lot, but I would say about 40%, if that number makes sense to
Yeah.
you, based on my experience. Like,
Yeah. All of the I assume yes, unless I'm gonna call you if anything's crazy.
cool, sounds good. So for efficiency reason, I'll go through each of them again. So we have about 70% so far. I would assume that people who drink soft drinks twice a week would consist of about 20% of the entire population. And then people who drink soft drinks 3+ times a week would only consist of about 10% of the entire US household population.
Mhm.
So looking into the numbers here, trying to quantify our numbers that we have is we have people who drink once a week, or that are the 40 million households. People who drink soft drinks are about 20 million households, and also people who drink soft drinks 3+ times. I would assume the 3 number. So that would give us about 10%.
Mhm.
So overall, we have here, which is 10 million. Overall, we have about 70 million who consume soft drinks on a weekly basis. But from that point on, I will try to calculate how many soft drinks. So again, taking into account the numbers of bottles that they consume. So for the people who drink once a week, that would be $40 million, 40 million people. For the people who drink twice a week, that would be about, again, 40 million. And for people who drink 3 times a week, that would be about 30 million. So adding all those up, that would be about 110 million bottles per week.
Okay.
So 40 plus 40 plus 30. And then from this point on, I would try to estimate the number of soft drinks who are sold in bottles, right? So again, making some assumptions here. Don't want to. I want to try to make it as realistic as possible from my experience.
Yeah.
Whenever I go to get a soft drink, I usually either get a fountain one or in a can, which is the probably more
Yeah.
easier option, or a plastic bottle, right? So I would assume that glass bottles would not be a huge component of this market. I would assume that I'm thinking between 10 to 20% would only be glass bottles. For simplicity reasons, I would use the
Yeah.
10% number, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Cool. So weekly consumption is about 11 million glass bottles per week. And then from that point on, I'm going to multiply that number by about 50 to annualize this number in order to get the annual number. So 11 million times 50 would give us around 550 million bottles.
Okay.
And then I want to understand what's the average price per glass bottled soft drink, right? Don't really have any numbers here, but I would assume that $5 would make sense here. If actually maybe that's too much, just because
Wow, man, you buy really expensive
I'm a
sodas.
bit I'm a bit biased here, just because I go to school in California and I'm in New York now. But I would
All
assume
right.
$2 per soft drink would probably make
Okay,
more
yeah,
sense.
that's closer to it. Okay.
Cool. So that would give us about $1.1 billion in
Okay.
annual revenue.
The only number that I think that would challenge from your assumptions that I think are reasonable is if you have a household, right, that is buying sodas, you think they're just gonna buy one soda in the supermarket, one bottle. You just take one little small bottle, right? You probably buy either 6 packs or that you can take
Yeah,
an average of you can make some assumption, right? So let's just multiply by 2 and say that the market is twice as large. Okay.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So we will get about 2.2 billion in
Perfect.
annual revenue.
All right. So that's reasonable. So what else do we need to know to answer the first component of the case that you described?
So we do have the market size here. Looking back at the framework, we said that we also want to look into the competitive landscape here. So understand
Okay.
like how fragmented is the market, how much room is there for us to grow. If there's sort of enough competition, if the competition is fragmented, we can potentially capture more share than if it's dominated by big players, such as, the things that come to mind are like PepsiCo or Coca-Cola that
Yeah.
could potentially be dominating the market. But that's my assumption here. If I were to move forward the case, I would like to look into the competitive landscape at first again,
Yeah.
and then that would make sense to me.
Fantastic. Okay. To keep us moving. So let's assume that the top two largest players take 50% of the market, right? Our client has about 15% of the market. Okay. And there's another player that is very small or used to be very small. That its name is Jarritos. Um, it has less than 10% of the market, but it has been growing at 30% CAGR for the past 4 years. What other information you might think is valuable?
So just digesting the information that you gave me is top two the top two competitors, which would be like something like Coca-Cola or Pepsi, would have combined 50% of the total market. We are also a pretty big player in the market. We have about 15% of the total of the annual revenue, so 15% of 2.2 billion. And then there's a third player who has less than 10% of the market, who has been growing really fast at a 30% sort of CAGR. The first thing that jumps to me is that obviously when we think about the top two competitors, and we have only 15% of the market share, they are sort of out of our reach to compete with. So I want to understand how we can capture the rest of the market to get on par with those numbers, just because from the numbers you gave me, these don't necessarily add up to 100%. So I think there's other competition there, just to flag that. The second thing that jumps to mind is we mentioned this third player called Jarritos, which has less than 10% market share, but has been growing at about 30% CAGR, which is annual growth compounded. So what I would look at next is understand the reason they are growing at 30%, just because growing at 30% is a really, to put things in perspective, growing at a 30% CAGR is a really like aggressive growth within the market, especially within the soft drinks market.
Do you know that yet? Or are you missing any piece of information to know if 30% is good?
Sorry, do I know what?
Do you know if 30% is great in this context, or are you missing some information?
Sorry, I don't necessarily understand the question.
Do you know if 30% CAGR is good compared with the rest of the players, or are you missing any other information?
Yeah, we are obviously missing some information about, what their product is, or like.
No, it's something simple. It's what is the growth rate for the rest of the market, or for the client, right? So the market has been growing at 2%, right? And our client's market share has been decreasing 2% a year.
Cool. So we have been decreasing at 2% per year, and the market has been growing at 2% positive.
Yeah. And Jarritos, they specifically target Hispanic consumers.
Target Hispanic consumers. Cool. So this provides more information about where we can move the case forward.
Okay, do you feel you have enough to come up with a hypothesis for your first buckets?
So just to take things a step back for now, just to digest all the information that we have, we said that the market is growing at about 2% per year. We are growing at about -2% per year, which is obviously not growing. And the competition that we said, Jarritos, is growing at about 30% CAGR. So because they are only targeting Hispanic consumers. And I think I've heard of that brand, so they are selling like a different type of product. So what I would like to do next is understand the specific target demographics that we are trying to go after, right? So they have been growing at 30%, which is a very large number compared to the market growth, which is about 28% difference between each number. So the second thing that I would like to do is understand why have we been declining our market share, understanding what customers are we targeting and how we are targeting them, and potentially finding out the most profitable customers to target when it comes to our product and launching our product within this new market. Would that make sense to you, or?
Yeah, and I want to move on to the other components of the case, but I think those are very, very useful questions, right? We have been decreasing because we were just focusing on other segments. And basically, we do, across our portfolio, we do have some brands that could potentially target the same market as Jarritos.
Cool.
So we have the project, we're in the middle of the project, and then the chief marketing officer says, hey, I know you've been looking into this, but we know that whatever we can produce, we can sell and make money out of it.
Okay, so our chief marketing officer says whatever we can produce and that we can sell.
Yep. Profitable.
Cool. So I want to understand, whenever we say whatever we can produce, does that mean like we can produce sort of a competitor for Jarritos, or?
No, whatever we can produce of glass bottles, right? We know that there's a market for it.
Cool. Sounds good.
And then we can make money out of it.
Sounds good. So yeah, again, what I'll probably try to go next is understanding what are some customer demographics here, understand like what do they want within this market? Like why is Firedo's growing at 30% rate and why are we declining at 2%? We said that we have some portfolio of products, so I would like to look into the portfolio as well and each of those growth rates.
So let's go back. Let's take a step back to your hypothesis, right? The first question was, is the market attractive? What is your answer? Okay.
Market is attractive. Yes.
What was the second question?
The second question is, what was the competitive landscape?
Oh, no, but wasn't the market attractive part of the competitive landscape? I'm thinking about
the
4 buckets.
The buckets. Yeah. The second was the company capabilities. So understanding what we can sell.
Okay. The third one?
Third one was the financial one. So understanding what the upfront cost would be and also revenue and cost drivers.
Do we have an answer for that one already?
I mean, we have our market size, which is 15% of 2.2 billion, which is the revenues.
But we also know that the chief marketing officer said, whatever we can do, we can sell, we can make money out of it.
That is true. I just don't necessarily understand what like that would entail, what that means in terms of like whatever we can make, we can sell.
What that means is that we need to focus on your second bucket.
Cool, the capabilities.
Yeah. So let me give you some information. So the client, they have manufacturing operations, both in Mexico and in the US, right? And they're exploring to see if they can focus some of those manufacturing operations to actually focus on those glass bottles and try to take them to markets. What are some factors or considerations that you would want to consider?
Cool. So we said that we have manufacturing capabilities in both Mexico and the US, and we want to focus on glass bottles. So the first thing I would want to understand is when it comes to glass bottles, what percentage of manufacturing is being done in Mexico versus what percentage of manufacturing is being done in the US? Second thing.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Second thing I want to look at is understand if we do produce the majority of our manufacturing within the US, I want to understand what does it cost to sort of produce it in each country. Like that, is it cheaper to produce it in Mexico? Is it cheaper to produce it in the US? So understanding the cost drivers for that. So understanding the direct labor, direct materials, potentially some overhead, understand like what's the cheapest way to produce this in order to make a profitable investment. And also the third one that I would try to understand would be the distribution model, right? We said that we manufacture and distribute our products, so the distribution is on us. So I want to understand how much it costs us to distribute the products that we manufacture within Mexico to the US, just because we're trying to expand within the continental US, right? So understanding whether or not we would spend a lot of money if we invest in the cheap labor in Mexico, how much would it cost us to bring that shipping over there? So like any border control cost, any other additional costs about like truck drivers or anything else.
Okay, so let's simplify the framework a bit, right? Because basically what they're saying is, hey, we have these two potential options to manufacture, right? Then there are some cost considerations that need to go into it. There are some additional considerations, okay? Cool. So we have cost, we have additional considerations. The first one that I don't know if you mentioned or not is if there's capacity, manufacturing capacity out of the two plants. The answer is yes, okay? Cool. So you started touching on that a bit, but let's brainstorm. What are the key costs that you will be evaluating, right? Let's say that you're the manager of the team and you need to assign each of the associates to focus on one of the areas. So what are the cost buckets that you will be thinking of when comparing these two options?
Cool. So again, talking about the variable and fixed costs, starting off with the variable costs, I would want to understand how much we're paying for labor. So understanding the wages per employee that we are trying to understand the costs of. I want to understand the direct materials and whether or not there's disparity between the US and Mexico. So what are some components that go into it? What are some, like how much it costs us to sort of create one single unit of sub bottle. For the fixed cost, we touched upon this for the capacity issue. So I want to understand how much we're paying per rent, how much we're paying for administrative costs. Okay. For all of this, Administrative cost, not as much, just because we're trying to understand the cost of goods sold here, based on my initial thoughts. But yeah, understanding the administration cost, and also in the variable cost, I forgot to mention that we also need to take into account the distribution costs. So understand how much it costs us to distribute our products, our products from the Mexico to the US or the US intercontinentally.
Perfect.
And also the other thing I would like to consider, which is probably less important than the direct labor and direct materials and distribution, would be understanding how much it costs us to maintain the factories that we are trying to ensure that there's capacity. And we said that we have manufacturing capacity. I want to understand how much capacity we have. So like how many bottles we can actually create and take it to the shelves. And yeah, just to sum it up, those are the costs that I would like to look into.
All right. So here's the information that they came back with. The cost, look at my numbers to make sure that I give you all the right information. Okay. So the cost to manufacture the bottle in Mexico, and manufacture includes direct and indirect and labor, is 10 cents a bottle. The cost to manufacture, including the same components in the US, is 15 cents a bottle. Okay? Then the cost to bring all the goods from Mexico, pass through customs, put it in the same location that you would get it in the US, is 5 cents a bottle. Those are the only costs that need to be a part of this analysis. Okay? So as I give you this information, literally you wrap up your day, you get these insights, right? And then the CEO of the company is saying, hey, I'm meeting with the board tomorrow and I want to look smart. So can you prepare a recommendation based on what you know already, so that at least I can give them some signal into if it's a good idea or not?
Sounds good. Do you want to jump into the recommendation first, or try to contextualize these numbers, see what they mean?
No, the CEO just called. You're gonna tell the CEO, hey, no, let's talk tomorrow, because he has to talk with the board.
Cool. Sounds good. So the recommendation I would give is try to produce all the bottles that we can in the US. First of all, just because we know that based on the cost information that was provided. I mean, let's take a step back. Understanding our recommendation first is it would be a good idea to expand this product within the US, just because we found out that the market size is about 2.2 billion %. It's growing at about 2% per year. And also we have been seeing decreasing market share at 2%, but there are ways we can reverse that if we launch this, if we end up launching this venture. So the way I would consider about doing this is first trying to understand where we want to manufacture these bottles. First, the recommendation that would be continuing the operations in the US, just because that provides about 15 cents per bottle. And whenever we think about the Mexico distribution model, that would provide 10 cents per bottle and also 5 cents per bottle for distribution. So it adds up about the same. But whenever we think about the US model, we don't necessarily exclude this other consideration that come in. So political stability is one consideration that I'm thinking about. That could be a risk if we do end up keeping things in Mexico, right? So there are a lot of border issue control. So politics can change every single day, and there could be potentially a lot of instability when it comes to that. So based on that recommendation, I would say that it does make sense to pursue this venture of expanding our glass bottles within the US and also keeping our operations within the US as much as possible.
All right, the CEO says, thanks for the recommendation, but I believe that my chief marketing officer will kill me if we go with that solution. Why do you think that is?
The reason that I'm thinking about this is we've seen that the third player, who was mostly targeting Hispanic customer base, has been growing at a 30% CAGR. And when we think about public relations, moving our own capacity from Mexico to the US, which we might have more sort of connection to the Mexico landscape, that could potentially be a reason for that. But I guess ways to mitigate that, we don't necessarily need to put the entire operations within the US. We can sort of keep it at a 50/50 percentage, and also conduct potentially ways to mitigate that is like conduct customer surveys, understand like what they would feel about their connection to our brand, how they how their loyalty is, and like what determines that loyalty. So understanding what our customers really want from us, and like where is some room that we can play with whenever it comes to public relations, would be good places to start.
Perfect. Well, the CEO thanks you for your advice, and thanks you for solving the case.
Awesome. Perfect.
Great job, Edward. How do you feel?
Feel good. I wish I had more time to sort of do some calculations about like how much each bottle would make, like how much it cost us to produce each bottle and like what's the break-even point. But I guess yeah, this was a very interesting case and like very operationally focused, which is probably not something that I'm very used to, but definitely a great experience for me.
Nice, nice. Any questions that popped out of the case?
Yeah, I guess what I've tried like kind of struggled with is like moving the case forward and trying to understand like what you really want from me whenever we move the case forward. So like, do you have any advice on like how we can make sure that transitions are like more smooth or like more like
Yeah.
make more sense?
Yes, and I think I mean, I've given this case probably more than 50 times, and there's always a different path, but we always go around the same blocks. I think you did a really good job with the structure. I can give you feedback specifically about to your question about moving the case forward is you're structuring a set of hypotheses, right? And you need to be thinking about the hypothesis and if you have enough data to go solving from one to the other, right?
Cool.
If you feel that you're asking questions, right, that get you to a third level of answer that might not change a lot of the trajectory of the way to solve the hypothesis, then you're going into depth. So I had to steer you back so we don't go into much into the specific. I believe that the questions that you ask compared with other 60 people is they're very good, they're very structured, right? But for some of them, you got to a level that was too deep to go to
Yeah.
move on to the next component of the case.
So keeping that at a high level more.
Yeah, I mean, basically, hey, is the market attractive? You reach a point where, yeah, the market is growing, there are players that are there, we do have some capabilities, we can probably make an assumption that the market is attractive, right? And you can work with the interviewer to say, like, this gives me enough, right? And then they can prompt you to say, but they're not going to penalize you for coming up with, like, hey, I have enough data to come up with the next answer, right?
Yeah.
That also happened with the profitability question, right? Hey, we can do it, we can make money. That's a cue for not our main focus, right? So you can always stay back to your hypothesis. That's it to confirm. That seems to be confirming my hypothesis that it is a profitable for the client. Any other consideration you'd like to factor in, such as, right, and then you can show your brainstorm capability there. But that way you can be crossing off hypothesis and just focus to what you need to solve the case.
Cool. That makes sense.
Perfect. Any other questions?
No, would love to hear your feedback on like specific things that I can do to improve. Like what was the strong points, what was the weak points? Would love to hear more about what you felt.
Perfect. Now, in terms of structure, it seems, I mean, I can easily tell that this is not your first time doing this. They're not your first rodeo. You did a good job at taking and structuring the buckets. I really liked how you went to the next level and explained the structure, especially when I asked you to I pressure tested the hypothesis with you. Right? Sometimes people struggle with that because they say revenue, cost, profitability, right? But you need to actually structure it as an answer to the client, as if it, and especially for everybody that is in the call. When you're thinking about these buckets, think about the storyline for a PowerPoint that you're going to be for the client, right? So basically, you want to structure it like this because if you just put profitability, then that's not a storyline. That's just a bucket. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I already mentioned my feedback on going too deep into some areas, right? Especially when you don't get enough. The only part that I think that I would say that we approach differently is when you go into a recommendation, right? With this case, I always force the recommendation, but I see you frozen. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Edward, are you there?
Yeah, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're back.
Sorry,
Okay.
my Wi-Fi just cut short. Sorry.
No problem. Okay, just to wrap up this point is, it's okay to take time to build a recommendation, right? The CEO is calling, but it's okay to take time to prepare the recommendation and put two and two together. There's one point that you missed that is, hey, the cost of manufacturing in the other is the same. I mean, that virtually the costs are the same, but I don't believe that to be the best approach for XY reason that you mentioned, right? In the end, you solved the case, you presented the right recommendation, you fact when you and also another point is you can also recap as if you're doing an executive summary, right? If you think about a PowerPoint, this is an executive summary, right? And if you go too deep into the specifics when you're building a recommendation to a CEO, you probably drifted a bit from that executive summary, right? So you might have missed a couple of the cues there. But overall, I think you did a great job compared with all the 60 people that have gone through this. And this is my way to retire this case, right? I wanted to, retire in glory or shame, depending on if people like it or not.
Yeah.
But that's basically that. You, I think you did a great job.
Thanks, Alfredo. That's very valuable feedback, and I'll try to work on those for future cases.
Oh, fantastic.
Cool.
Perfect. Japheth, any questions from the group or any way that we could be helpful?
Yeah. Wow. Well, first off, thank you both for a great case interview demonstration that was really fascinating and multifaceted. And I know folks have gotten a lot out of it. There's been some good comments in the chat. So folks, we'll take the last 6-7 minutes here for some questions, right? You got a question about the case, you got a question about Kearney, right? Working at Kearney, etc. Love to take those. So first off, question from John B here. Alfredo, how would you rate the kind of difficulty of this case? The question was, is this case like an average difficulty level for Kearney?
I think it is. I've about this case at first round interviews, late round interviews, right? And what we typically do is with these type of cases is we adjust it depending on the profile, right? If you're doing for a VA role versus a final round for a summer associate, right? Then we can press more on some of the questions. What I would advise people that are applying to a specific sub tower, for example, if people are going to the automotive practice or the digital practice, right? Then they might expect a similar difficulty, but just tailored to that industry as they're preparing.
That makes sense, and that's helpful. Question from Jonathan: when the CEO, right? When you get the CEO walks into the room, type deal, is it usually all right to take a minute to kind of prepare the recommendation?
Yes, you can do the same dance that we do all the time, where it's like, is it okay if I take a minute? Yes, you can do it. But the purpose of that, specifically in this case, and I've seen in other people do it, is, hey, we just gave you all of the data. This conclusion was pretty obvious, right? So we don't want to delve too much into it. So let's see how do you digest it and summarize it.
Amazing. Going on that, for the recommendation, what would be a kind of great structure for that? We've got a couple of questions kind of tying into that.
Yes. So I think that the logic should be you're doing an executive summary, right? Think about it. You're entering the meeting with the CEO. She's just gonna care about this executive summary, right? So here's what you asked us. Here's the question that you asked us, right? The answer is this one. Here are the different reasons why we believed it, right? So the answer is it is a good idea. The market is attractive. It is profitable. And when you think about how to do it, you should do it from X or Y location. So that's how you can structure and make it super tight.
Answer first, pyramid principle right there. Right, you don't need to go into the weeds with the details, and that's what we work with Fortune 500 companies to train their teams on how to communicate more effectively, and that's one of the most common things we're drilling into them. Right, hey, the CEO doesn't want to know everything.
You're doing God's work, perfect. Yeah.
Amazing. So this collaborative style that you demonstrated here today is this fairly typical not only in case interviews but also right in actual right consulting engagements? I think that's a question we get quite often.
Oh well, at Kearney, yes, that's I think what differentiates us, right? We're not trying to go to our clients and tell them, hey, here's a framework that you should do or copy paste stuff, right? We're actually trying to solve the problems for the client and make sure that it's tailored, right? So if we're telling the clients that we're going to be doing that with them, we also need to do that internally as a team. So that is really important. Yes.
Love it. Amazing. fun question here. What's a favorite kind of fun memory you have from your time at Kearney? Like, what's a fun trip or client engagement? What's something that's stuck out to you from the past couple years at the firm?
Ooh, I love it. Okay, so there's actually people fun of trips that we get to do internally, and you get to interact with people, and there's a client experience. And I'm gonna break it down. With trips, I'm part of HOLA, which is a Hispanic origin Latin association. I don't know. HOLA means hi, and we just fit something to say hi. But basically, we do a retreats. Everybody meets. We talk about our experience. I mean, that this is not just for our support system. There are also multiple for. I mean, the goal is that everybody feels included. So definitely amazing memories there. For a client, it was earlier this year. You would think that the biggest companies have very complex issues, but a lot of time it's even more difficult when they want something simple. So we were putting together the design of a dashboard for the chief supply chain officer of a Fortune 2 company, and just spending 3 weeks working hard, working with all the stakeholders, doing all the prep meeting, and then you go into the room, put together that something in front of them, and that person says, "I like it." Oh my God, it makes it all worth it. Especially understanding that it is not me; it is a team that was behind putting all of this together.
That's awesome. What a good feeling. What a rush.
Yeah.
All right, we've got just a couple of minutes here and a couple of questions about the case. So,
Mhm.
Alfredo, how would you have refined the recommendation on where to play within the glass bottle soft drink market, given Hispanic consumer segment grows 30% versus the market average of 2%? Should we prioritize sales to Hispanic populated areas?
So I will the way to structure it will be when you're, I mean, think about the executive summary, right? You're saying the market is attractive, and there's a specific place where it's attractive, which is the Hispanic sector, right? And then when we look at our manufacturing capacity, we see an opportunity to do it to target Hispanic consumers with our brand portfolio in our Mexican operation. That will be one approach, right? If you still believe that, I mean, we just want you to have a perspective, so there's no right answer. If you still believe that it's worth manufacturing in the US, right? You just have to acknowledge the fact that even though the Hispanic sector is something that we could target, there are some alternatives to do it without stopping production in the U.S. That's the best way to structure that data point, because it's pretty significant. That point is 30% growing 50 times larger than the rest. So that's something that we want people to acknowledge in the recommendation.
Absolutely. That's super helpful, Alfredo. Well, we're about at time, and so let me just go back to the slide with the QR code here. So folks, for you to connect with Kearney, they'd love to meet you. Alfredo, any final words of encouragement or advice to everyone on the call preparing for cases?
Yes, you're doing the right thing. You're preparing. Come prepared. Have fun. The one thing that you have to remember as you're preparing for a case and going into the interviews is the interviewer is rooting for you to succeed, right? There's nothing that sucks more than calling somebody to tell them that they can get the offer, right? So work with the interviewer. Where we want to help. We want to see you do great in the case.
I love that. I love that. That's super encouraging. All right, folks, you heard it from Alfredo, the man, myth, and legend himself. Alfredo, Edward, thank you both so much for your time. We'll include links to get in touch with Kearney. We'll include an email when we send out the recording of this session, so stay tuned to your email for that. That'll be going out in the next couple of days. But again, y'all, thanks for joining, for your engagement in the chat. All you over on LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. Happy to have you here with us. This was a great session. And again, please do connect with Kearney and stay in touch. We've got lots of great events coming up in the future as well. So I'd love to see you on a future call. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Japheth. Thanks, Edward.